Patching is something that is really common in a household. You know, we always have clothing, pants that need to be repaired, and I get all sorts of patches over the years. So this particular pair of pants is in the crotch. There's a patch here, and with something like this, I like to just put a patch underneath. So I always have scraps of fabric laying around, but this might be something that you could think about too. I know we don't want to create clutter, but trying to just collect little pieces of fabric. Maybe it is a pair of pants that is too far gone. You can save them or use the cloth out of them, especially if it's like jeans or denim. Those are often the ones that need patches. If you have boys that are always ripping holes in their knees, keep old denim because then you can put it as a patch for, the newer pair of pants when you're trying to fix them. So this, I'm just going to actually lay this patch. This one is not denim. I thought that I had some. It's like a linen blend, but really anything is going to work as a patch underneath that. And this particular fabric does fray a little bit, so I may want to go in and serge or zigzag the edges of the fabric. But often I'll do that after I'm done with the patch, just because I want to have it big enough to lay the patch in. So here, if you're looking at the back side, I'm actually going to be laying the patch here, but then I want to be sewing from the front. So really, I'm going to be flipping them over and trying to lay it as flat as possible. And I typically do like to put some pins in here to try and hold it down so that it's held into place while I'm sewing. And again, it might be tricky as you're sewing. You might have to take those pins out, but I'm just going to put a couple of pins in here. Like that. And again, as you put it on the machine, you want to keep everything as flat as possible, which, especially because it's in the crotch area, just go slowly. You're working around a curve. So there's all of this fabric. So trying to catch all in here. I'm going to demonstrate how I would do it on the machine. This does come all the way up into the zipper area, so we're going to try our best to get that as well. Now I'm ready to start. I'm going to turn the machine on. And this thicker part here might give me a little bit of trouble. I'm going to see how it does. So just trying to begin to catch the stitches there. And for the most part, we're just trying to follow along. First, we're just trying to follow along the edge of where the hole was. And I'm taking out, this is the little attachment to the front of the sewing machine, because I realized I really want to have it so that I can move the pants around under them. Not all machines have that. It's what's called a free arm. Something like that. So just stitching along. Now this is also something you could do by hand if you're a hand sewer. And just be really patient with your machine, because if you have a lot of seams to go over where the hole is, it may not love that. It might give you a little bit of trouble. Depending on how durable your machine is. So this one I'm doing on a home machine. I do know that on my industrial machine, it wouldn't have any trouble. And so after I stitch around, I'm going to trim out some of all of this. And when you turn the corner, you lift the back of the presser foot and leave the needle down in so your fabrics are staying together. So you're just going to turn in. Okay. And so now we've stitched around the patch. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm going to trim your fabric, your thread from the back side. So I've actually stitched around the hole and the patch is secure, but now I'm going to start going back and forth across here. But first, I want to trim out all of these extra threads because they're going to really jam in the needle once we start wanting to go back and forth across that. So trim away whatever you can. This. And I mean, you can do that before stitching around the patch. It's totally up to you. I typically have my patch secured and then start doing this. And then as I stitch across, I'm going to try and push these together a little bit more so there's not as big of a gap here, like that. But first, I'm going to go ahead and go under from the back side and trim a lot of this extra patch because I had a big piece in there. But one of the reasons why I'll put a much bigger piece on at first is because it's hard to keep a patch in the right spot when you're just using a couple of pins. And there's been too many times where I've cut a smaller patch and then it shifted and suddenly it's not really filling my hole and it moved. So that's one of the reasons why I just prefer to initially use a bigger piece and then trim it away after I've stitched it down. So now I have it back on the machine. So as you can see, I'm kind of going to move this together a little bit to see if I can get it to get the pants to come together a little bit more. And it is super bulky right here. Let's see how the machine does with that. Okay. And then you're just going to want to go forward and backwards. It looks like my thread actually came out of my needle, which when you go to start sewing, you always want to make sure that there is a tail on it, which I didn't this time. Hence one of the reasons. So let's see. On this particular machine, as you can see, it's my push to start machine. It's really not that different from a regular home machine. I mean, you can get many push to start machines. It has a foot pedal attachment, but then once I got used to using the push to start, I never attached the foot pedal. So we're just going back and forth across the hole. And I want to make sure that, yep, it's catching. So I'm using the reverse button or the back stitch button to do that, which every machine would have a back stitch button. I'm just going backwards and forwards right across this tear. And that's the patch that we have, just like that. There's a little bit more up here that I can try and get to so it doesn't rip anymore, but that is going to be a little bit more challenging because it is harder right here in this area. And so there's like a lot more thickness. It might be something you want to consider hand stitching down rather than stitching by machine in that particular part.